Tom Caron does a wonderful job at Nesson. He's a good guy, and there you see him. And he joins us. Tom, gut punch, as Eckersley said, is correct. That was a terrible loss they had on Saturday night. Awful. You can't lose that game. You get 2 runs in the 10th, getting no hit. Blue Jays last night. I mean, this is, it has the makings of a very long year in Fenway. I know it's April 27th, but the signs are not good. Let's discuss.
Yeah, well, we've seen this before, Chris. You don't win a championship in April, but you can lose one, right? You can't fall too far behind. They've lost 8 of 11 games in the AL East, the toughest division in baseball. And without that tiebreaker game, those are even more important, right? The head-to-head games are more important than ever before. So to lose Saturday night where you had no hits through 9 innings, you got the couple runs in the 10th, and you gave it back in the bottom. Last night, they had that lead in the 9th. They finally had a big inning, a breakthrough inning, 4 runs in the 8th, but then they give it up in the 9th. Springer ties the game with a home run, then they lose in 10. That's a lot of gut punches in a 4-day span.
Oh, it sure is. I know they haven't hit a lot, but their bullpen has been, they don't really have a scenario of who their closer is. They try Diekman, they try Robles. He was awful the other night. Here comes Matt Barnes. I mean, they really don't have that bullpen. It's almost like by committee. And when you don't hit a lot, and you go into these late innings with a 1-run lead at 2-1, you got to get the outs. You can't have that combination where your offense is bad and then your bullpen collapses because you can't win. And that's where the Red Sox are right now. Tommy, let me hear.
Yeah, 1,000%. They've got 5 blown saves. That's tied for the most in baseball. And it's not just not having a closer here, Chris. It's kind of a lack of defined roles for the entire bullpen. They've got 10 relievers out there. And talking to Dennis Eckersley after the game last night, he didn't know who's coming out, and he's usually pretty in tune with the bullpen. You don't know. Is Robles going to pitch the 8th or the 9th? He pitched the 8th last night. He got the job done, handed it off in the 10th, and Diekman couldn't protect the lead. So it's just you don't know who's coming out of that bullpen at any given time. Now, Garrett Whitlock had become a really important arm in that bullpen. The Rule 5 pickup from the Yankees last year. He's got the lowest ERA in Red Sox history in the live ball era. But because Tanner Houck is unvaccinated, he couldn't go to Toronto. They had to move Whitlock into the starting rotation. Cutter Crawford, young pitcher who's been pretty good. He's not vaccinated. He's not out there. But more than anything, Whitlock has really been the guy who can go 3-4 innings. He can close a game. He's done both of that. But as now, he's a starter, and they haven't won a game since he's come out of the bullpen.
Excellent point on Houck. See, that's where you're getting paid by a franchise and you decide not to get vaccinated, you're hurting your team. And there's an example. He pitches here in Fenway. They have Whitlock for the 8th or 9th inning. They probably win the game. So I got to give him some of that responsibility. I'm a little worried, too, about the Devers. I'm looking at it from a Red Sox perspective, Tom, about the left side of the infield with their contracts. You know, Bogarts, Devers, it hasn't gotten done yet. You know, when a team goes bad, and 2 of your big guys are wondering about their contract, it can get very foggy pretty quick. Let me hear your thoughts on that for a sec. Go ahead.
Those guys are at the top of that list, but don't overlook Kike Hernandez, J.D. Martinez, Christian Vasquez, and Nathan Eovaldi, also all free agents at the end of this season. I was talking to Alex Cora about it at spring training, and this happened in 2019 after they won the World Series in 18. He said it was really a distraction. He thought he learned enough that year to keep it from being a distraction this year. Devers isn't quite as concerning because he's got 1 more year. He's not a free agent at the end of this year. Bogarts is, and he's the captain of this team. He's the leader of this franchise. He's the one who went out and called Trevor Story and said, listen, we want you here. I'm not going to worry about the fact that you're a shortstop. You play middle infield with me. We'll get everything done, and we're a better team with you here. That's kind of leadership he has. Now, everyone knows Story could slide into the shortstop position if Bogarts were to leave. But Bogarts won 2 World Series here. He was huge in 13. He was even more important in 18. They need Bogarts for the future. Sam Kennedy, president and CEO, said, we want him here forever. But they haven't come close in negotiations, and he will probably reach free agency at the end of the season. Now, the Dodgers do this, right? You see the Dodgers let guys get to free agency, then they sign him. No reason Chaim Bloom can't sign him at the end of the year. But then you're one of 30 talking to Scott Boras trying to get it done.
Yeah, that's Boris. Remember that. He's great with that. To keep that, he creates markets, so keep that in mind too. I haven't watched that carefully. Has the Cora COVID scenario resulted in maybe a shaky managerial decision with some of these defeats, Tampa, and of course the last two in Toronto, because he's not behind the bench? What's your take on that? Let me hear.
Now, Will Venable's going to be a major league manager. He's a great baseball mind, Ivy educated, brilliant guy, and a good ball player. The players love him. But he's been thrust into a really tough situation at a moment when you're dealing with players out with COVID. You're dealing with the bullpen shuffling and losing some of their role definition. The one question I think everybody really has with what Venable has done was the Eovaldi start on Monday, 72 pitches. Didn't bring him back out for that one extra inning when he was facing the 7, 8, 9 hitters. The bullpen couldn't get it done. Ultimately, Bichette hits the grand slam, and they lose that game after tying it up. But he's come into a tough situation. I'll say this about Alex Cora. I don't know if he's the best manager in baseball. There's a lot of really good managers out there. I would argue he might be the most valuable manager in baseball. This team really leans on Alex Cora. His relationship with the players is unmatched. Rafael Devers is a better player when Alex Cora is around. He's a guy who brings the superstars and the role players together. He's just a special guy. He was like that as a player. I covered him when he played. He's one of those guys in a clubhouse as a player and now as a manager, brings guys together, helps them through slumps. And I think when you're slumping right now, as the Red Sox are, they really miss Alex Cora in the clubhouse.
That's a great point. I think there's something to that. He's more valuable than an X-and-O's guy. And you also made a very good point before, and I hadn't even thought about it, the tiebreaker scenario, with this division. They lost 2 out of 3 at Yankee Stadium. They have lost now 4 out of 5 to the Blue Jays. They lost a series in Tampa. Now, that's a gauntlet, and remember, all 3 series on the road there, except the one at home. I'm a little worried about where they stand in this division. Now, they have an easy September pennant race, lots of games against the Orioles and the Reds. I buy that. But they could dig themselves a hole. Toronto's good. The Yankees are going to beat up on the bad teams, as they always do. And, of course, you're sitting there with the Rays, and you know about the Rays scenario. So they could be looking at being buried in 4th place. Your take on that? Let me hear.
Yeah, and that's trouble, right? I mean, we saw it last year. You had 4 teams in this division win 90 games or more, and the Blue Jays, who lost the season series to a couple of teams in the division, miss out on the playoffs by 1 game. And so that's the difference. And now, as we said, you finish tied, and it's going to be the tiebreaker. And you're starting to lose a lot of ground, certainly against the Blue Jays, the other teams as well. Those tiebreaker games, 4-point games, as we call them in hockey, right? Those are going to be really tough to overcome late in the season. Good news is, after this road trip, they're in the middle right now of 17 games in 17 days, no days off. The last 10 in the division, that's what they're in the middle of right now. They get that day off on Monday finally, and I think it's only 4 of the next 46 games are in the division. So doesn't mean it's easy, but they get a little breather outside the division, try to make up a little bit of ground after stumbling here in the AL East. But this division's loaded. Fangraphs before the season had a 4-way tie in their season prediction. They had all 4 teams with the same record. That's how tough this division is going to be. And if you fall too far behind in April, you're going to have trouble in September.
I love the new setup for Nesson out there in the center field bleachers at Fenway. Tom Caron runs that, and he's always does a hell of a job for us here. Tommy, always a pleasure. We'll keep in touch. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. The good news here, the good news is the Celtics are giving everyone a little ground cover, okay? So you got a little time to work this out without everybody. And I see on the other network, I know you think it was the Nets collapse, but we here are pretty excited about the Celtics, okay? They're a pretty good team.
You should
keep an eye on them.
They got the look. They got the looks of a champion. Yeah, it's a very good point.
They do.
They've got
star players. They've got star players, Chris, and they don't lean only on the star players. It's a fun team to watch.
I agree.
But from a Red Sox perspective, not everybody's paying that close attention right now. They got time to work this out. It's only April.
Excellent. There you go. I didn't even think of that. I should have asked that question. I'm smarter than that. Good job, Tom. We'll keep in touch.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very
Chris.
much here today.
Appreciate it, Doug.